A crowded hour coming up. But the public anger following the release of this Brereton report into what might or might not have happened with our soldiers in Afghanistan, make no mistake, apply the pub test, the public are angry. My correspondence bears witness to that. One writer says, we have desktop officers investigating our veterans from the Afghan theatre of war. Most of these high-ranked officers have never walked in the shoes of these men on the front line. They were directing everything from the safety of the bunker. They didn't have to put up with the horrific conditions these men had to put up with, where your bed partner was your rifle. All the media and politicians baying for blood, wanting them to be charged with war crimes. If any of them got up every day where Afghans are your likely executioner because they don't follow the Geneva Convention rules, these men come home in a fragile condition and are left in limbo. Suicide is an option, unquote. And yes, today we learn that 9 serving and former defence personnel have taken their own lives in the past 3 weeks. 8 men and 1 woman, aged from their 20s to their 50s. One mother who lost her veteran son to suicide said her heart was breaking for other families. As one of my correspondents has said, and I quote, I suggest to the critics, until you've walked in the shoes of these men, shut your mouth. The anger is directed right at the top. The Prime Minister told the nation that we would have to confront brutal truths. These men, apparently all of them, are guilty before one chapter of this report has been read. No one's named, so they all are guilty. Then we learn that Afghanistan's president has said that our Prime Minister expressed his deepest sorrow over the misconduct by some Australian troops, so they're guilty again. The Foreign Minister has written to her Afghan counterpart to extend, quote, apologies for the misconduct. Guilty again. These are allegations yet to be tested in court, all because of an ABC program. And who were they listening to? Well, the ABC retained an Afghan journalist. The investigators travelled to Afghanistan, conducting interviews with, quote, witnesses. Justice Brereton interviewed Afghans about the allegations. This is an extraordinary betrayal of young Australians sent to war by government to sacrifice and serve. And now the Prime Minister is warning against, quote, a media trial before the justice system can deal with the findings. Hang on. He's told the nation that the findings are brutal truths. Our Prime Minister's apologised to Afghanistan. The Foreign Minister has written to extend apologies for the misconduct. Guilty again. As one viewer wrote to me, and I quote, what the blazes do they think the troops do? It's kill or be killed, PM. What age are you living in? Would you put your hand up to serve your country? Too true. Consider this. What happened to the defence of Australia? What would happen if many decide to resign? And who would blame them? As Professor David Flint said to me a week ago, quote, just as well such an approach didn't apply in the Second World War, otherwise the rising sun would be flying over Canberra today. One who served in Vietnam wrote to me movingly, and I quote, as a Vietnam infantry veteran, I've spent 53 years crying in anger over my experience of being forced into killing people whom our government considered was the enemy. I went to a church school as a boarder from 10 years of age. I went to church every Sunday and I was taught our Judeo-Christian moral, ethical standards of how to live. Then at 20 years of age, the government took me out of my sheltered life and thrust me into the killing fields. After 12 months of training, where most of those doing the training had not seen active service, I was sent to Vietnam. On the second night there, I was on the receiving end of a mortar barrage. I spent the next 12 months unlearning all I'd been taught on how to live a good life. Every day I left the security of our camp, going out looking for people to kill. We found them often, but they became things, not people. I was involved in actions where my mates were killed. Mates I'd been drinking with a day or so earlier. I had to pack mates up in body bags and send them away, never to be seen again. Most civilians expect us to behave as normal, law-abiding citizens. Even those in command have no understanding. General Angus Campbell, who makes public comment, wouldn't have a clue. He's never been in the fights his soldiers have. He commanded an infantry battalion in Timor, but is unlikely to have ever heard an angry round. Ask him, writes David to me, has he ever been under fire like his troops, so he can understand the pressure they are put under? There's no training or preparation, says David, for the first time you're involved in death and carnage. The people of our country don't have a clue what the few are forced to do. Yet General Campbell apologises to the nation for our actions. What sort of leader is this, asks David. During the Vietnam War, we went away and didn't come home until our tour was over. During the Afghan War, soldiers being sent away, returned to normality and sent back to the killing fields over and over again. Does our nation expect these guys to be normal? There's virtually no effort to repair those soldiers' minds when they return. Not that anyone is capable of doing so. General Campbell, writes David, is not much different from your average civilian in his ability to understand the damage caused by the activity of combat. But he should recognise that he owes the diggers an apology, not the nation. And Scott Morrison talks about brutal truths before a court has been constituted, apologises to the president of Afghanistan before a court has been constituted, and then says, we don't want a media trial. The Taliban have responded, as one would expect, and described our men as savage, degenerate invaders. Well, the public won't readily forget those responsible for the pile-on against our troops who serve and sacrifice. And you know what happens when they leave the cause after 16 or 18 years of service? Not a brass razoo, no pension, nothing. Anonymity and social oblivion. No one from politics, the Defence Department or Veterans Affairs ever picks up a phone. The pile-on following the release of this report turns these fine and selfless Australians into pariahs if they weren't already. This is betrayal of the worst kind. The good news is Australians are not ashamed of their brave young soldiers. They're ashamed of the Mother Teresas, quick to run to judgment. Charles Province was a veteran of the US Army. He's the president of the George S. Patton Historical Society. It was he who wrote the poem, It is the Soldier. Perhaps some of those people in Canberra should read it. It's the soldier, not the minister, who's given us freedom of religion. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier, not the campus organiser, who's given us freedom to protest. It's the soldier, not the lawyer, who's given us the right to a fair trial. It's the soldier, not the politician, who's given us the right to vote. It's the soldier who salutes the flag, who serves beneath the flag, and whose coffin is draped by the flag, who allows the protester to burn the flag. Yes, indeed. To the political headline grabbers, one word of advice. Save your outrage for the disgraceful and continuing deaths by suicide from those who served and felt abandoned. And as for this report, whose details yet to be ventilated in the appropriate justice forums, spare us your synthetic and opportunistic outrage. It offends decent and grateful Australians.